Welcome to another video. I am dressed like this because I just came back from my internship, so this is quite on theme. I have worked an alarming amount of part-time jobs throughout my life, whether that was during high school or uni, and so today I will be sharing some tips on how to get a part-time job, what kind of part-time jobs there are out there, as well as like different tips I have learned throughout my many years of working in retail and hospitality and all that jazz. So why should you work a part-time job? I think no matter your situation, working a part-time job, even if it's unrelated to what you're studying or where you want to be in the future, will always be beneficial. Not only does it help you better understand society in general, whether that is developing people skills, aka like dealing with shitty Karens and stuff like that. For example, like learning how a small little cafe manages its inventory and finances. It can essentially teach you things you never knew. Having your own money also helps advance your knowledge in financial literacy. Basically figuring out what the hell you can actually do with your hard-earned money, whether that is like budgeting or just investing. Now let's talk about the kind of part-time jobs that are available to you as someone who's just come out of high school and have no idea what you're doing. I like to think that all these jobs fall under three main categories: retail, hospitality, and services. So retail is like the sale of physical items. One of the most common retail jobs is in fashion. This can range from outlet stores and op shops all the way to like luxury brands. The four main branches of fashion retail, I would say, is your clothing, your bags, your shoes, and accessories. Clothing can range from women's fashion. It can also feature like specialized stores like men's suits and even lingerie stores. Bag stores can focus on handbags or even luggages. Shoes could be women's shoe stores, sports shoes, school shoes. Accessories can range from jewelry stores and even glasses. You can also work in beauty retail. These jobs usually are for selling either makeup products or skincare products. There's also health retail, which can be particularly attractive if you're like a med student or you just want to learn more about drugs and pharmaceuticals. For example, you could be a pharmacy assistant or dispenser. You could even work at a veterinary clinic or like a pet shop. You could sell pet toys and you can give advice to customers about pet care. You could even be an optical assistant and you would be selling glasses, doing fittings for customers, and you would also be doing some like eye tests as well. You can also get a job in consumer goods like electronics, sports gear, or like home improvement. Some of my friends worked at technology stores that sold like phones, cameras, and even like game consoles, and I've heard you can get like pretty good discounts there. Sports stores will sell, sports equipment and athletic wear, and it can be great if you're an active person. Home improvement and gardening stores sell like hardware tools, your flowers and plants. It was like actually my dream one time to work at this gardening store, but I was like 12 and they couldn't legally hire me at that point. Some stores also sell furniture and home appliances like your fridges and your ovens. Moving on to hospitality. Basically, if you're talking to a customer, that's hospitality. Personally, I would say hospitality has the largest range of roles available, and they can overlap with retail as well, and often has a really high turnover rate because it is really hard work and you kind of have to deal with a lot of shitty people. But I would say it is one of the easiest industries to get into, especially if you're just starting out. And it was also the industry where I found my first job. Hospitality jobs usually include the food industry, but can also include jobs like customer service and administration. You could be a waiter or a chef at a cozy cafe or a fast-paced restaurant. You could work in medical administration as a receptionist for a local clinic, or even in customer service at a hospital, where you will gain like a lot of experience dealing with medical inquiries. It's likely you won't actually be working on the hospital floor because you're not really qualified if you don't have a medical degree, but it can be a really great way to talk to healthcare professionals for career advice if med is something you might want to do. And last but not least, services, which can lead kind of entrepreneurial if you play your cards right. This also, I would say, is kind of one of the most uncommon part-time jobs, just because you have to be like on top of your shit. Basically, if you have any kind of skill set, you can provide a service. A lot of my friends have been tutors, and they either work freelance for family friends and like tutoring cousins and stuff, or they can work at a tutoring company. Especially if you have like really great grades and you're really smart, tutoring can pay very, very well. You can tutor traditional subjects like maths, science, and English, or if you have a special skill set, some of my friends have tutored piano, chess, badminton. Possibilities are quite endless, especially if you had like a tiger mom back in the day and they were like getting you to do all those AMEB piano exams. You can finally get something back from all those years of hard work. If you're an artist or photographer, you could even do some freelance work, sell your designs on Etsy, or even sell some of your work at anime conferences or comic festivals. You could even be a makeup artist and work at the makeup stores, or you could even, start something on Instagram and do makeup for your friends. You could be a pet sitter or a dog walker, or You could even be a janitor, and do not judge people who are janitors. One of my friends in university literally was a janitor and they made so much bank, especially if you're cleaning offices and apartment lobbies. You're doing it after hours, so you get after hours pay. And it's also a really great option if you're an introvert. I remember I was like curious. I was like, take me along to one of your cleaning jobs. And I went and chilled with him and we literally like blasted music and we were just like dusting shelves and like vacuuming floors. It was low-key kind of a vibe. Now that you know the types of jobs that there are available, it's really important to know what employment styles there are also available to you. So there are 4 main types. There's your full-time, part-time, casual, and freelance. Full-time is essentially when you work all 5 days of the week. Part-time is when you have set hours on certain days. Casual is when you're allocated shifts kind of at random and you don't really have a guaranteed work schedule. Freelance is just when you're self-employed and you can call all the shots. If you're a uni student, I would recommend casual just because you get paid higher and also you don't really need leave. If you have an exam or something urgent coming up, you can kind of just be like, hey, I can't work this day, and it is your full right to just not show up because legally that's what you're allowed to do. In Australia, full-time, part-time, and casual jobs include superannuation. It's essentially money that your employer puts in a retirement account of your choice. As of 2025, employers have to pay at least 11% of your wages into your super. You can check your super balance online and you can even choose your own super funds. Different types of super funds benefit you in different ways. There's like specific ones for different industries. Super is also applied to both Australian and non-Australian citizens. So make sure you do your research because I reckon it's like pretty important to realize what kind of rights you're entitled to at work. How to actually get employed. The part we have all been waiting for. Most places do advertise their places online, like your Seek and your Indeeds. I would still consider handing in your resume in person. Filtering through online applications is a lot of work for the store. If you can express your interest in person and if the manager just happens to be there, it's a really great way to just get your foot in the door. Let's talk about resume building. Oh yeah, everyone's favorite topic. It is so important to have a clear resume. Make sure you list relevant experience that can demonstrate your interpersonal skills. I know they say like tailor your resume to every job and it's such a pain in the ass to do, but I would highly recommend doing it at least a little bit. Most employers kind of just want someone who can learn really quickly and so they can essentially spend less time training you. That is just the reality. And they also just want someone who gets along with everyone and doesn't steal money from the cash register. Another thing is to make sure that your resume is neat and organized. Luckily, there are a lot of templates online you can copy. Think of your resume as almost like a flyer for yourself and that it represents your personality. You really want it to give off a sense of professionalism and confidence. Another tip I have is to just apply everywhere and anywhere because beggars can't be choosers. Some websites like Seek and Indeed will allow you to filter jobs by radius. I like to think that all the time you are taking getting ready or traveling to your job, that counts as dedicating your time to the job. For example, if somewhere pays you more, but it is much harder to travel to, it might overall pay you less compared to somewhere that is walkable from your house, but is slightly lower in pay. And now I thought I'd share a bit about my part-time job adventuring. I don't know, I feel like it's always good to hear from someone who's already gone down the rabbit hole. So I wrote all my jobs down and I think I worked a total of 10 different jobs. At my peak, I was working 3 jobs at once and doing uni, which is something I highly do not recommend. So starting from high school, I was a waitress at a sushi restaurant. My parents had a sushi restaurant and during the school holidays, I would essentially hang out over there because they didn't want me home alone by myself because I would literally watch TV for like 10 hours straight. And my parents thought it wasn't great for a developing teenage brain, which I completely understand now. I would stock drinks in the fridge and top up the utensils and napkins on all the tables. Eventually, as I got a little bit older, I would start wiping those tables and taking out the trash. As I got even more older, I became a little bit more confident and a little less socially awkward. My dad would get me to start serving customers, even handling the cash register, and I would even do a little bit of banking. When I got a bit older, I thought it was a bit weird working with my dad, so I wanted to get my own big girl job in high school. So I became a burger and sandwich chef at a local fish and chip store. I remember I would go there after school like twice a week and I would work with other high school students. And after that, on the school holidays, I volunteered at a local opera shop. I got to see a lot of really cool things come through the stores, and I even got my first dibs on secondhand items and thrifted outfits. And then I think I was like 16 and I took a break for 2 years to focus on my VCE exams, which were my university entrance exams. Of course, as luck would have it, I was the class of 2020, so nothing was open anyway. And then I got into university and I was like, shit, I need a part-time job to pay off all these uni fees. I remember my dad was driving me around all these neighborhoods and shops. I would hand out so many resumes and get like no response at all. So I went online and I decided to become a pet sitter. During this time, I had pet guinea pigs, so I decided to make that like my specialty. My second customer were this old couple. They liked me so much that I even had them as repeating customers for a little while, which was really cool. Of course, during this time, I was still searching for a more traditional part-time job. I was still like handing out resumes all the time. And then one day I went to the seafood restaurant, handed in my resume, and of course I met the owner and I was hired on the spot. I had a lot of fun there, but it was like really hard work. You had to be like quick on your feet, make sure customers were getting their orders on time. At night, there was also a lot of cleaning to do, like mopping and vacuuming, even like drying dishes and cleaning the toilets. But I think this job definitely taught me a lot of resilience, and I'm ultimately really happy that it happened to me. Unfortunately, this was still during the era of COVID. The lockdowns were still coming in waves, and I stopped getting shifts at the restaurant, unfortunately. So I decided to look for alternative forms of income, and I found this online tutoring company, and my students literally ranged from a 5-year-old that I was teaching the alphabet to a VC student preparing for university entrance exams. Eventually, I created quite a good connection with a couple of my students, and I decided to go like private tutoring, which kind of worked out for us because I earned more and they paid less because of all the commission that tutoring companies take. I had to create my own invoices. I had to get like an ABN, which is like a business number or running like a small business. And yeah, I was like preparing her for selective entry exams, and like I'm really happy to say that she got in. She was like in the top 1% of her cohort, and it was just such a rewarding experience. And then after COVID, her family actually invited me out for dinner, which was so lovely. Eventually, COVID restrictions loosened and I started working at the restaurant again. As a waitress, I got more set hours and shifts, but it was still really exhausting, so I started looking for alternative jobs, which turned out to be a really bad choice because this landed me in the worst job I have ever experienced in my life. It was like literally one of those dodgy Asian restaurants, and they were like, we're gonna pay you like $14 an hour, which is like $10 below the minimum wage. And it's just unfortunately one of those places that took advantage of foreigners that don't speak English, because they tend to have a much harder time finding a part-time job. They kept delaying like my paycheck, and they would be like, come back next week. Eventually they gave us my money, I quit on the spot, and we just left, and I've never gone back to that restaurant since. But it did open my eye to this kind of situation, and I think it just helped me understand the world a bit better. I knew it was a shit job, so I had continued job searching. A pharmacy assistant role popped up and I took it. It was like a part-time job. They put me on like once a week, and I was like, seriously, what the heck? So I worked there for just a little bit until I found my next job. I found this job at Champion, which was in retail, finally. I stayed here for the next 2 to 3 years, and here I met some really cool people and I made a lot of friends. But then eventually I left this job as well, and I went to work at The Ordinary. I was in a department store and I was surrounded by all these other beauty brands and skincare products. I made a lot of friends with the aunties there, and like low-key, I felt like I was like their adopted daughter, and they were just like, try this product, and I would go home with a lot of samples, and it was just really fun. And then I was greedy and I decided to get my third job as an optical dispenser. It was pretty cool, and it was like really different to anything I had really ever done before. I had to learn how to do and read eye tests, learning like how the heck the Medicare industry in Australia actually worked, and I still have this job to this day. And of course, now we get to present day. After uni, I was able to land a full-time internship, so that is what I'm doing right now. It is still unlike any job I have ever worked before, but there are definitely aspects of it where I feel like the skills I have learned in my part-time roles have 100% been useful in my full-time role. And yep, this is where I am today. Thank you for watching the whole video. If you had, it is now very late at night because I still get very nervous talking in front of the camera. Now I'm going to spend the next couple hours editing this video, and I hope my stories were entertaining and give you guys a realistic idea of what working a part-time job really is like. If you guys have any like nightmare stories about working a part-time job, feel free to like list it in the comments below. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time.